We've all seen the movie The Matrix. It was interesting and fun on the big screen of the TV, but has it become a bit too real in your own life? Are you seeing glitches in the Matrix and trying to figure out what's happening? Have you been told that you've been tricked and that you need to fight against what they've done to you? The deception. Whether you're just beginning to notice, or if you've been searching for a more peaceful and congruent way to live without battling them, you're in the right place. I'm Ken, and I'll be joined by Eliza and Rena Stella. Let's explore together on the Liberty Ark. And welcome back. This is Ken, and I'm here with Eliza and Rena Stella again at the Liberty Ark Podcast. Thanks for coming out, guys, and talking through this stuff tonight.
Great to be here.
Very happy to be here.
Great. I'm going to recap just a little bit before we get going tonight. We've been going through a book called The Great International Heist. And at the beginning, we talked about where you are or where we are to try to understand what's happening in our world, odd things that some of us have noticed, and you might have too, and trying to figure out where we are so we can figure out where we want to get to. Then we talked about the path of liberation and cycles of control that the system seems to use and that cultures use in order to keep us under control. And today we're going to get into an interesting concept that hopefully we can make sense, and that is the reality of how contracts work. And we won't necessarily be talking about contracts in the way you may think of them as far as getting into a business contract with somebody, kind of, sort of, but I think there's more to it than that. So we're going to do the reading. Eliza's going to do the reading for us, and then we'll come back and talk through these things. So let me get the full screen up there, and you go right ahead, Eliza.
Okay, Ken, thank you. The harsh reality of contracts. The stark reality, however, is far more pragmatic. At its core, a contract is an unyielding agreement, and binding debt remains an inescapable obligation. The universal laws governing these contracts are indifferent to personal beliefs and expectations. Therefore, it is imperative to sever these attachments and contracts that bind us in perpetual cycles of debt and servitude. To achieve true freedom, one must understand and dismantle the underlying structures that enforce these bonds.
Okay,
Heavy stuff.
Yeah, it is. And we'll have to kind of unpack this, I think, quite a bit, because there's a lot there that I don't know that's going to be really obvious. So who wants to kind of jump in and give us some thoughts?
Do me a favor, Ken.
Mm-hmm.
If we can go back to that first slide and see if we can definitely make sense of this, because I really think our conversation is going to shock a lot of us. Again, you mentioned it's not the way we usually think about contracts. So I think that's where we should start. Let's start with breaking down what today we know, what we think a contract means. And I think we go slowly because, again, be prepared. I really feel you guys are going to leave shocked when you guys understand what it ends up really being or meaning to us in what we've been discussing in the past several episodes.
And I, if I hadn't been on this pathway for a while, I'd be saying, wait, a contract is something that I agree to for my benefit and not on behalf of something else that isn't me. That's a contract, right?
Well, plain and simple, I thought a contract was an agreement between two people, right? We agree on something, we shake hands, and we move forward. As simple as that. That's what I thought until we've been discovering and awakening with the read that has been provided to us here. So yeah, that's as basic as I saw it. A contract being an agreement.
So when you think about an agreement between two or more parties, you would assume that all the parties are aware that there's an agreement being made. So if you go fill out an application for a credit card, or you go fill out an application or just agree to contract with a contractor for your house or something like that, you're both kind of understanding what's happening for the most part, or at least on the surface in that agreement, especially if like a laborer is going to come and work for you at your house, and they give you the stats, what it's going to take, how much it's going to cost. You can put that on a piece of paper. You can both agree to it and sign it, and that would be a contract, right?
Exactly. Both parties must enter a contract knowingly, right? Voluntarily and with intention. Is how I see it as well.
So at its core, a contract is an unyielding agreement. So we said agreement, but it's an unyielding agreement, and a binding debt remains an inescapable obligation. So if you've both agreed to something and you come to that agreement and you sign, and both of you understand what's being agreed to, that is a binding debt, right?
Right. But I also want to say, if not, the contract can be null or void, right? For us to be on the same page here.
Mm-hmm. When you say if not what?
Well, if there's not, let's say, for example, if there's not two people agreeing, right? There has to be two people to make an agreement. If it's just a document being presented and only one party agrees to it or signs, but the other party didn't, then it makes it null and void, is how I see it.
Yeah, so I can't just walk up to you and say, here's a contract that we have, and you've never agreed to it, right? I can't hold you to that.
Hence the signatures, right?
Right. Demonstrating that both of you have recognized what you're agreeing to.
Unless there's this concept of unilateral contracts, one party agreeing and carrying all the responsibility of the obligation, yet perhaps, and expecting that there are just benefits from it. So,
Eliza, have you also heard of the word, is it adhesion contract? Is it the same thing as unilateral, like you mentioned? Adhesion?
I'm not sure if they're the same, but it is one party. If there can be adhesion contracts, there could be multiple parties. But I believe most of them are unilateral. In other words, we're the only ones giving a commitment. But what about the other party? Where's that signature? And really, and on behalf of who or what are we really giving that commitment? That was my biggest learning, and that's a bigger topic that we'll someday get into.
Now, before we go to the next slide, let's really stick to this, because here's one thing that I observe off of this is, again, continuing our conversation from us figuring out where we are to the path of liberation, right, to the beliefs, the cycle of control and awakening. as we go, there's one thing that I have come to realize, and that's the meaning of the words are everything. And when it comes to contracts, even more so. Example, on this, what we see here, one of the things that catches my attention, aside a contract, really every word on here is important, but obligation. Like we need to understand what contract is, what agreement is, what obligation is.
Eliza used a word a while ago of expectation. And I think that's really important in relation to obligation. So if you have an obligation, you might hear the person say, I have to do X. If you listen to people speak, you'll hear that phrase a lot when they haven't signed a formal contract. But there's been some sort of agreement, whether they're aware or not of an agreement of having been made, that causes them to believe, I have to, or I'm expected to.
And does that go along with the words binding and inescapable? Because those are scary words, especially if I didn't really comprehend that I was contracting.
Well, let's break it down a little bit for us. And one of the things we want to understand is like, where do we look for these definitions, right? Where would be a good place to go and really put time into digging the definitions? And one of the things I learned again from this book is Black's Law is a great place to visit to get the meaning of the words when it comes to our discussion here. So again, a couple of the words like we already discussed contract, right? Being an agreement between two or more people, which creates an obligation. And then what is obligation? A binding agreement or acknowledgement of a liability to pay.
And I think another piece of paper that's important to understand is application. You know, we fill out applications all the time. Application for a driver's license, application for a passport, applications to enter school. And we're putting our signature on that. And I don't think most people look at that as a contractual relationship. When you fill out a driver's license application, you just think you're asking for a driver's license, right? But
So what does that really mean? What does application really mean? What is signing or filling out an application? What is that? What are we really doing? Because it's not just plain and simple filling out information. There is something more to that.
Yeah. And what about ourselves, our true selves? Are we really signing on behalf of? That sounds so goofy to even say, but I'm signing this on behalf of who? Of what?
So even if you don't understand what exactly is happening, it's still happening. Because these laws are indifferent to how you understand it and what your expectations are.
And the personal beliefs and expectations are about that. That's what my spiritual being holds. So contracts must be between parties that cannot hold personal beliefs and expectations. That sentence is a little bit mind-boggling until you really get into hanging with this and really comprehending that, because this sentence is huge.
They use these other words like application and driver's license and so forth, rather than using the word contracts and obligations, because then it's like a good thing. I've got to go get my driver's license. I'm going to be able to do the things I want to do, but you don't realize that there's a flip side to everything.
Wait a minute, Ken. You're saying that the driver's license is a contract?
That I never thought it before I started looking into this, that could be a contract, but it's the application, any application that we do. But these one-sided contracts, one party signing, unilateral contracts, uni meaning one, that we get ourselves into, that we are contracting ourselves into just thinking we're getting lots of benefits, but we are contracting ourselves. And therefore, as this slide goes into, it's imperative that we comprehend this enough to go ahead and sever these attachments and contracts, because they are binding us into perpetual cycles of debt and servitude. And we could talk a lot on exactly how that occurs and how it's manifesting. So what are your thoughts there, Ken and Reina Stella?
Yeah, I mean, it creates an obligation, right? When you get the driver's license, we see it as a benefit, but it has obligations attached to it, as a contract does. And we think
this continues to definitely astonish me with more and more info on the basics of what I thought a contract is or was to what it really is today, with the knowledge that we're gathering.
And obligations create control, right? So we're back to the cycles of control from before. I think we can tie that all in probably on the next podcast. That's probably enough for everybody to chew on for 1 week, I think. We will go a lot deeper into the future, but just give this some thought and look at, as you go day to day, begin to recognize the places where you're saying, I have to. Have to means I'm obligated to. If there's an obligation, there might be a contractual relationship that you volunteered yourself into in order to create that I have to. And that's a form of servitude that you may not want. It may not be worth the benefit that you're getting from it. And there may be other ways that you're just not aware of. Any last thoughts from you guys?
Can't wait till the next episode on this discussion.
Same here. Because trying to discern what we have to do and what is voluntary, there's so much of our lives that, how we have been trained, indoctrinated, that we think they're have-tos versus something where we have a choice. And we do have a choice.
All right. This has been fun. And next time's liable to be even more fun.
Looking forward to that, guys. Have a really good night.
Too. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
The views expressed in this Liberty Ark podcast are for informational and educational purposes only. They do not constitute legal or tax advice, and they may not reflect the official positions of anyone at all, really. We want to express our appreciation to the authors of the unpublished manuscript titled The Great International Heist, on which the Liberty Ark podcast is based. Rebecca and Jonathan Rodrigues, the authors, provide courses that go into much greater depth and are available at libertyarkpodcast.com/white rabbit.